Hello again, and welcome back to the Religious Education Initiative. This is Year 3, Week 43, Day 1. We're continuing our way through the book of 1st Kingdoms, or 1st Samuel. So last time we saw the people of God win a great victory over the Philistines, led not by Saul, but by his son Jonathan, who entrusted himself and his armor-bearer to the will of the Lord, moved boldly, and together they became the instruments by which the Lord brought chaos into the Philistine ranks. Eventually Saul and the rest of the people joined in the pursuit of the fleeing Philistines, but the victory was won already by just two men acting in faithful trust and dependence upon the Lord, or rather, the victory was won already by the Lord working through only two men. We pick up the story this week in the midst of the pursuit of the fleeing Philistines, and we see what kind of king and leader Saul is proving to be. So, this is verse 24 of chapter 14. Now Saul committed a very rash act on that day. He had laid an oath on the troops, saying, "Cursed be anyone who eats food before it is evening, and I have been avenged on my enemies." So none of the troops tasted food. All the troops came upon a honeycomb, and there was honey on the ground. When the troops came upon the honeycomb, the honey was dripping out, but they did not put their hands to their mouths, for they feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard his father charge the troops with the oath, so he extended the staff that was in his hand, and dipped the tip of it in the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the soldiers said, "Your father strictly charged the troops with an oath, saying, 'Cursed be anyone who eats food this day,' and so the troops are faint." Then Jonathan said, "My father has troubled the land. See how my eyes have brightened because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better if today the troops had eaten freely of the spoil taken from their enemies, for now the slaughter among the Philistines has not been great." After they had struck down the Philistines that day, from Michmash to Aijalon, the troops were very faint. So the troops flew upon the spoil, and took sheep and oxen and calves, and slaughtered them on the ground, and the troops ate them with the blood. Then it was reported to Saul, "Look, the troops are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood." And he said, "You have dealt treacherously. Roll a large stone before me here." Saul said, "Disperse yourselves among the troops, and say to them, 'Let all bring their oxen or their sheep, and slaughter them here, and eat. And do not sin against the Lord by eating with the blood.'" So all of the troops brought their oxen with them that night, and slaughtered them there. And Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar that he built to the Lord. Then Saul said, "Let us go down after the Philistines by night, and despoil them until the morning light. Let us not leave one of them." They said, "Do whatever seems good to you." But the priest said, "Let us draw near to God here." So Saul inquired of God, "Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you give them into the hand of Israel?" But he did not answer him that day. Saul said, "Come here, all you leaders of the people, and let us find out how this sin has arisen today. For as the Lord lives who saves Israel, even if it is in my son Jonathan, he shall surely die." But there was no one among all the people who answered him. He said to all Israel, "You shall be on one side, and I and my son Jonathan will be on the other side." The people said to Saul, "Do what seems good to you." Then Saul said, "O Lord God of Israel, why have you not answered your servant today? If this guilt is in me or in my son Jonathan, O Lord God of Israel, give Urim. But if this guilt is in your people Israel, give Thummim." And Saul and Jonathan were indicated by the lot, but the people were cleared. Then Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and my son Jonathan." And Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, "Tell me what you have done." Jonathan told him, "I tasted a little honey with the tip of the staff that was in my hand. Here I am. I will die." Saul said, "God do so to me, and more also. You shall surely die, Jonathan." Then the people said to Saul, "Shall Jonathan die, who has accomplished this great victory in Israel? Far from it. As the Lord lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God today." So the people ransomed Jonathan, and he did not die. Then Saul withdrew from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. Okay. So this this is a bit of a strange thing. So, on the one hand, Israel won a great victory, a miraculous victory, clearly a victory that was given to them by the hand of God. Two men don't by themselves defeat an entire raiding party, an entire army, without the help of the Lord. And Jonathan has done, so far as we can see, everything right. He has extended himself, he has put himself in the hands of the Lord and has given God the glory in all these things. Where we see Saul rather, as this oath that he takes seems almost more inclined to try to grasp the credit for the victory back for himself, even though he was sitting there in the camp trying to find certainty about the results, while Jonathan was entrusting himself to the Lord and being bold. So, clearly, at the very least, I think it's clear my heart is with Jonathan, and we know that Saul is not praised. Saul is not a good example of a king or of a faithful man, and there are conclusions that we can draw that are sure, that are clear, that are certain here. But I kind of want to get out of the way. Why is it that the lot falls to Jonathan as to who has sinned? Why is it that God is not giving answer? The way Saul asked the question: if the guilt is in me or in my son Jonathan, let it. So sort of there are two things. First of all, this casting of lots it's a thing that is done, but it's not clear that it is a good thing. It's still trying to do divination. It's trying to bend God to your will, and it's not entirely clear that this is a clean result, if you will. Divination is not something that is blessed by God. And we see, too, that there is a clear sin that results from Saul's oath, that the people have pushed themselves too far. They are hungry, and in their hunger, they break the law. They eat the food before it has been sacrificed, before it has been bled. They eat the blood, which is forbidden, clearly forbidden in the law. So it almost looks as though Saul is trying to use this casting of lots to put the blame off of himself onto someone else. Oh, I didn't do anything wrong. I just, I made an oath to God that we wouldn't eat until he'd given us the victory. And I didn't eat, but all of the people, they ate the blood, and then they sinned. And my son Jonathan, he even ate the honey. So there are issues here. The author here also seems to be with Jonathan rather than with Saul, but it's difficult for me to say with certainty and clarity. This is how this reads. This is how Jonathan is completely exonerated and Saul is completely condemned. This is a messy situation. What is clear here, and this is an important and a relevant point, because the question of making oaths and divination, well, that's clear. Don't do that. Don't try to seek certainty. This is not blessed in the life of the church. We do not cast lots to see whether God chooses me or someone else. No. Just no. But the other thing, the thing that is deeply relevant to the day-to-day, is this question of the oath to not eat until victory is given. Because in the course of our keeping the discipline of fasting, we do abstain from food. We do deny our desires. And we also experience very, very often, I think, we experience pushing ourselves too far, so that when we are done with fasting, we turn to gluttony. We eat too much. We turn away from the things of God. And it's not helpful. The point is not that trying to fast strictly is sinful. It's fasting more than we can sustain is imprudent and leads us to sin. And therefore, if we find that we cannot keep a rule of fasting, if we cannot keep a rule of prayer, if we cannot keep a discipline that we have set for ourselves, then that discipline is doing us no good, and in fact is becoming an occasion to sin. This is the right time in every circumstance to go to your priest, to go to the spiritual father, to go to the church, and to ask for a rule that you can actually keep, to ask for guidance and instruction. Anyway, that is the necessary thing for us to note here. Anyway, so that's it for this reading. We'll see you all for day 2. God bless you.